But let's bring in John Avalon again, and we're joined by CNN law enforcement analyst James Galliano. Jimmy, you spent 25 years at the Bureau, a former special supervisory agent. If I'm a parent who lost a kid, and I know that the tip went to the FBI that said this kid might shoot up a school, what happened, and how do they explain that to those parents?
And Dave, the three of us, you and I and Allison, we're all down there in Florida, and the emotion, the pain, the grief, the sorrow, it was palpable. And on Friday afternoon, when the news came in that the FBI had received a tip and what we call an actionable lead, and had not been followed up on, it was a veritable gut punch to us. Those of us in law enforcement, on the job now and retired, we take these things, this is our worst nightmare, and we take these things so seriously. The call came in on January 5th on the public access line. Now, that's either an 800 number or an 888 number. It would come into a professional support employee who would have been the first level of triage. They would have looked at it. Obviously, this had enough information in it that should have been given to an agent. An agent or agent supervisor would have screened it and then sent it to an office of origin. Because this was Broward County, it would have gone to the Miami office. Somewhere along the way, whether it was human failure, and the FBI is made up of 35,000 employees, they're fallible human beings, or whether it was systems failure, and systems are only as good as the humans that process them, the FBI has got to get to the bottom of this. I laud FBI Director Wray. He did the right thing getting out in front of this. It's painful. It's awful. Literally, my stomach right now is in knots thinking about the parents that had to hear this on top of what had just happened. But we'll get to the bottom of this. There'll be full transparency, and I trust that we can find a way to make sure an error like this never happens again.
I mean, in the FBI's defense, John, 200 calls a day come into that call center. So it's a call center. They field these calls, and they have to figure out which ones are legit, which ones to dispatch somebody from the field office on, which ones not to. Sometimes the calls come in and they're like, I saw somebody at a 7-Eleven a week ago that kind of looks like somebody I saw on a wanted poster. But this one had real specifics and really scary specifics. So obviously something broke down at the call center, okay? We can figure that out. But meanwhile, Governor Scott of Florida is calling for the FBI director, Chris Wray, to be fired over this. I mean, that is, you know, I don't know even what adjective to use for how misplaced that is.
Often you hear Republicans say, let's not politicize a tragedy. In the resistance to talk about guns in the wake of these mass shootings. Rick Scott is politicizing a tragedy by calling for Director Wray to step down, pure and simple. Look, this is a horrific moment for the country, for members of the FBI, because somebody screwed up, the ball was dropped, there needs to be an inquest, and then there needs to be lessons learned, and it could be any number of things. But pointing the finger at the FBI, as also the president did on Twitter, trying to say that this was, they were distracted from the Russia investigation. 35,000 members of the FBI are not distracted by the Russia investigation or, questions on social media.
Has nothing to do with the call center.
Nothing. So let's be clear about that. The voices who have the most moral clarity and most moral authority on this are the kids, who you interviewed so powerfully, David Hagen, and the others who are now calling for this March for Our Lives in March. Want to talk about when is it the right day to talk about gun control in America if it's not the right day after a shooting? How about March 24th? Let's have a conversation with the kids who were affected, because these kids can be powerful advocates for themselves.
They're future voters. I
mean,
they are future voters, and they're taking the bull by the horns here. Everything that they're saying and what they plan to do.
And over 100, there are 180 congressional districts that have had mass shootings take place. So there should be more political awareness and a sense of responsibility by Congress, if only for political, if not moral reasons, than we've seen. So let's see if they finally get off their butts and do something on it.
Look, you got to talk about Sandy Hook when this is discussed. Sandy Hook children were slaughtered. We did nothing. Democrats were in control of the White House, the House, and the Senate. Nothing. Vegas, no bump stock legislation. So you have to consider the past when discussing the president.
You do. And a lot of folks look in the wake of Sandy Hook and they say, you know what, that just shows that we're impotent as a nation to do anything. But, this is the only nation in the world where this kind of thing happens. The bump stock is particularly infuriating because it was bipartisan in the wake of the largest mass shooting in Vegas. And then Congress waited till they thought the American people forgot, and you got crickets. Well, now maybe there's an attention back on doing something.
It does feel like we're at a tipping point. I have to tell you, James. It does.
You've said that before.
I have, except that
several times.
All of these kids are teenagers. Okay, so unlike the tragedy at Sandy Hook, where they were little kids, now there's teenagers, future voters. This is Florida, not a blue state.
Right.
And so
it is gun country.
It's
Florida
gun country, and despite all of that, these kids know what they want to do. And on March 24th, when they have this national march, people will hear their voices even louder.
I think the era of fatalism is over, where people sit back and they go, there's nothing we can do, and everybody retreats to their intransigent corners. Folks struggle. And listen, as I say all the time, I'm the perfect spokesperson for this because I'm a veteran, I'm a former law enforcement officer, I'm a gun owner, I have a concealed carry permit, I am a hunter. I'm the exact person who needs to step up and say, we invented gunpowder in 700 AD. The first guns were mid-14th century invented. The 1791, the Second Amendment comes online, and here we are in 2018, and we're hanging on to this, and we're going, we just can't talk about this, because if we do that, we're somehow going to tick off the Founding Fathers. The Founding Fathers could not envision that a 18-year-old kid could go into a gun store. He can't buy beer, but he could buy a semi-automatic weapon, and it's a weapon of war. Dave, we spoke about this. It is a weapon of war.
Yeah.
Oh, you're wrong. It's not fully automatic. It has a collapsible stock. It has a pistol grip. It has detachable magazines. We have to make sure that those kind of things don't fall in the hands of somebody like this.
If there's one positive opening, it was Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma, gun country, saying he's open to some movement on background checks.
Oh.
That's certainly some major progress.
Yes, there's more.
No snowflake.
There is also a big Republican donor, former RNC finance chair, who's coming on our show. He has raised $600 million for Republican candidates, and he's not going to do it anymore unless they get on board. So we're going to talk about all of that. Gentlemen, thank you very much.